Welcome to another episode of Exercise Matters with me, Randall Cooper.
And me, Mick Hughes.
Support for today's episode comes from Premax Performance Skincare. If you're active, you focus on strength, endurance and recovery. But what about your skin? Sweat, friction and the elements take a toll. That's where Premax comes in. High-performance skincare made for high-performance people. From recovery creams to anti-chafe balms, massage creams to exercise-specific barrier creams, we help your skin go the distance. Keep your skin as fit as your body with Premax. Available now at premax.co.
And support for today's episode also comes from Learn.Physio. Health professionals, are you staying ahead of the game? Learn.Physio brings you cutting-edge education from world-class experts in sports and musculoskeletal medicine. Online courses, hands-on practicals and expert resources, all backed by the latest evidence and designed to fit into your busy schedule. To be your best, learn from the best. Get started today at Learn.Physio.
Well, good morning, Mick. This episode is going to be released or dropped, as they say, on Christmas Eve. So for those of you who are listening, whether it just is the day before Christmas or during kind of like that holiday week, both Mick and I celebrate Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you. If it's just Happy Holidays, then Happy Holidays, to you as well. I think, Mick, and your background today looks like you're getting ready for it, starting to acclimatise already. Will you be in Canada when this episode drops?
This future episode, I'll be logged off. I'll be in Canada. I'll be at a beautiful place called Lake Louise in the Banff National Park area of the Canadian Rockies. Yeah, I'll be hopefully sitting by a nice warm fireplace, having a big hot chocolate, maybe lacing up the ice skates and going for a skate on the frozen lake that sits behind the hotel. So future me is that's what I want. Hopefully I get that. So we'll see how the next few weeks rolls out. But what about the shirt? Check the shirt out. It's got Surfing Santas, I think. Yeah, Surfing Santas. This gave very different vibes to what we normally have here at Christmas Day with the beach and the sun. Completely 180 for what we'll experience this year.
Well, we've known each other for a number of years, Mick, and every single Christmas your shirt game improves. So well done again on this year, kind of coming out with the most outrageous shirt.
Pleasure.
I like this one though. It's very good. So this is the last episode for 2025. If you're listening soon after the drop, we are going to take a little break. Mick going away. I'm going to take a little bit of time off as well. We will take approximately about 1 month off and look to kind of have new episodes dropping again from late January onwards. And we were just talking about this before we started this episode, Mick, but we've got some really cool topics and guests kind of lined up. This is the fun thing about this podcast is like it almost never ends. The topics and the things that we can discuss that are actually meaningful to people. It's not like we've got 6 things to discuss and then we kind of just need to keep revisiting it. We're going to get through the end of season 2, let's say, 40 or 50 episodes in, and it's like we're only just scratching the surface.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, and like every few months there seems to be something new on trend. Something that's been talked about on a popular podcast that we need to probably discuss and sort of maybe sort of temper everyone's enthusiasm down and actually give a true evidence-based talk about.
Yeah,
I reflect, like, it's completely off topic, but the amount of people that have come to me in the clinic lately and said, should I take peptides? I'm like, And it's like I hadn't heard about that conversation for about 10 years. We had the Essendon saga back in late 2010s. Everyone, peptides were a hot topic. Then it just went absolutely quiet. Didn't hear the word peptide for over a decade. And then this year alone, I'd probably get it once a week. A young male come in. I'm like, which Huberman, Rogan, or who's been talking about this? Yep. And it's always the same kind of popular voices. And I'm like, oh man. Anyway, so that's been an interesting thing. And I like how we've sort of got this really impartial platform that we get to actually talk about, probably a nice evidence base behind it rather than something that's maybe like a little bit more, I don't know, popularised or influencer biased or whatever it may be. I like how we're using our platform for the greater good.
That's exactly right. There is fashion and trend in sport and exercise and health, and to break it down to see actually what does work and doesn't work, I think is important. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to continue on with that in 2026. So looking forward to doing that. Hey, we've got an episode to kind of get through today. It's not all about just saying thank you to everyone for listening to us this year.
Do we have to talk? Do we have to do
do.
something? All right.
We do have to do something, mate.
Well, speaking about something that's quite polarizing and popular and very almost like black and white in some people's eyes is the topic of free weights versus machine weights. And that's the topic that I'm going to tackle today. And it's actually the first topic of this season too where we haven't had an expert guest, which is kind of making me feel a bit nervous because I've done the deep dive. I haven't had to rely on someone else's expert opinion. But no, it was a good. I enjoyed doing the research for this one and trying to track down some really high quality evidence to support the discussion about free weights versus machines. Where does your bias currently sit, mate? Do you have a side of the fence that you like to sit on for this one?
For me personally, when I'm in the gym, I'll just use a mixture of both. And it'll also depend on like why I'm training and how I'm training. And to give you an example, like, back when I was in my 20s, to train my chest and do your traditional bench press, I used to do the traditional bench press with a barbell. But now I just find it so much quicker and easier to jump on the machine. And I find that I can get myself to failure so much easier, or not easier, but like more safely, I should say, because the last thing I want to do is pop up on TikTok, with dropping a weight on my chest and having to have people kind of lift it off. So there's that safety element to it as well. But I think in answer to your question, I think most people would think that machine weights are for novices or for the oldies, and that the free weights should be for the performance athletes and the people who want to get big and strong. I don't think that. I know I've read your notes, mate, but I know that's not really true. But I think that's the myth that's out there. Would you agree with that public perception?
Yeah, I would agree. It's to use the quote in inverted commas is that free weights are more functional than machines. And that's where, a lot of people will get up on their high horse and talk about function versus non-function. And there's going to be settings where it's going to be appropriate to do free weights. And there's going to be, it depends on which lens you're coming from, be it a physio lens or a high performance sport and conditioning lens. And that's where I think a lot of the debate arises from. But yeah, it was interesting doing this deep dive and how it probably... Ultimately, it probably doesn't matter, but anyway, we'll talk a bit more about it as the show goes on. So, I personally I don't have a strong opinion either way. So, I'm not all or none. I probably come at it from a bit more of a nuanced and person sitting right in front of me kind of opinion. But I'm not 100% advocate for one versus the other. It depends situation. So getting started, I guess, setting the scene for this topic, what is resistance training? I think it's probably like something, some basic 101 stuff to go over first before we get into it. Resistance training effectively is your muscles working against an external load, be it body weight, free weights, machines, cables, bands, etc., etc. The whole primary objective of doing resistance training is effectively increase or maintain your muscle strength, increase or maintain your muscle mass, improve your power, or improve your performance, depending on what your performance goals are. There are lots of different, physiological responses that do happen within the body, but in short, it will affect the nervous system as well as the muscle system. And interesting, I've always found this fascinating that, in the first month of resistance training, very little is actually done to the muscle tendon unit in terms of breaking down and making it bigger and stronger. A lot of the gains we see either on a bench press or a squat or a leg press or a knee extension, whatever exercise you're doing, the gains you see and the improvements that you feel are largely driven by the central nervous system and the efficiency of your nervous system drive rather than the breakdown. So you feel stronger, but you're actually not physically any different. And all the gains are seen from about 4 weeks onwards, which I still find a fascinating response, especially when you get that delayed onset muscle soreness for the first couple of sessions back. You feel like your muscles have been torn apart, but nothing's actually really happened at your muscle level.
Well, maybe just with the motor unit recruitment or the increase in motor unit recruitment, you're just firing up cylinders that you haven't used in a while, and that's why they're getting stressed and getting sore, which is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly right. And so the gains made effectively will depend on three typical things: the mechanical tension, so the tension on the muscle and how it's being pushed and pulled; the volume and the effort, and will dictate how your strength, your endurance, your muscle hypertrophy, your power will all benefit over time; and effectively frequency over time. So there's three key things there that need to kind of be looked at if we're looking to improve any of the variables in what we're resistance training for. And effectively, be it a machine or a bar, so free weights versus a machine, the tool, either one or the other, is the way to deliver that stimulus to the muscle. So if we want to get strong, whether or not it comes via a machine or a bar, that's the tool to make that happen. So that's where we can dress it up in many different ways. But if we want to get strong, or if we want to change the way our body looks, we need to deliver a stimulus, and how that stimulus comes into the body will depend on your own certain needs.
Yeah.
So common beliefs and myths about free weights versus machines. Number one, free weights are more functional, and the claim is that they require more coordination and hence a better transfer to sports and activities of daily living. Number two, machines are inferior to free weights or are seen as cheating in inverted commas. And the claim is that you're not doing really much in terms of strength work unless it's with a barbell or dumbbells. And myth number three, machines are safer, free weights are more dangerous, or vice versa, which way you looked at. So some mixed beliefs there depending on who you talk to. Ultimately, this podcast will aim to, refute or
let's look at the evidence.
Agree with those claims, but let's have a look at the evidence. So the evidence in young adults. So I've looked at adults and older adults because there's often quite a distinction between the two and who will benefit one versus the other. So a meta-analysis by Horgan and colleagues, 2023, a mixture of adults being 18 to 40-year-olds. We had 13 studies included in this systematic review, over 1,000 adults. Majority of them were male. Once again, females underrepresented. It was roughly 6 weeks of training were the inclusion of the 13 papers with an average of 2 to 4 sessions per week exposures of resistance training. The outcomes looked at when we looked at both free weights and machine weight training programs, the outcomes we're looking at were maximal strength, hypertrophy, and counter movement jumps. Now, the key findings for this systematic review are that dynamic strength, so both groups, be it free weights or machine weights, both groups made large and significant strength gains, no differences between the two. Hypertrophy, there were small but significant increases in both groups in muscle size, but once again, no significant differences between free weights or machines. And jump performance. This was where there was a slight advantage to free weights over machines, but not a consistent benefit. So both groups, free weights and machines, improved their counter movement jump over a period of time, so 6 sessions or 6 weeks at least. 2 to 4 sessions a week. And there was certainly an improvement, but there was a slight trend towards improved jump height in our free weight group. That was the only thing that was different across the studies. And so in a nutshell, strength, hypertrophy between free weights and machines, no differences across the board. But importantly, both groups, if you want to get strong, you can get strong with 2 sessions a week for at least 6 weeks, whether or not you do free weights or resistance training. If you want to make your muscles grow, same thing. If you want to jump higher or be more powerful, there's a slight improvement in the free weight group over the machine group, but you will get better in the machine group if you want to improve that. So interesting findings there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that when it comes to either a hypertrophy stimulus or a strength stimulus, the load and the tension, like you say, just the muscle doesn't know, right? It's a stress on the muscle. It's going to adapt and respond to it, and that's what the data shows in this study. The difference is that counter movement jump, and I think this is where people, like your myth number one was that it's more functional. And maybe in that situation, that's where the action of actually having a load on your back, let's say they're doing squats, I assume, and you've got to stabilize that. Not only are your key muscles like your glute max and hamstrings and quads and soleus and all those things kicking in to actually do it, you're going to get the small little muscles around your core, the small little muscles around your hip, small little muscles around your ankle and your feet, to help stabilize that. And that I think transfers just a little bit more neatly into what is required from the body during a counter movement jump versus having no stability function if you're just going to do a leg press on a machine, for instance. So that to me resonates. I feel that is an accurate reflection of the way I would sit with the difference between the two.
Yep. Yeah. And also too, a lot of the things, talking to a lot of strength and conditioning coaches and people much smarter than me about this, is that squatting and jumping and deadlifting are skills that naturally do get better with repeated practice. Machines, you have to have some degree of coordination to move a leg press, to move a knee extension, but the excitement on the central nervous system would be less, and it's less of a skill-based movement. And that's probably where also too, if you're going to do squat jumps, if you're going to do loaded squats and you're looking to get that transfer to a vertical jump, then it kind of makes sense here in that it's basically the same movement pattern, just with a added strength stimulus. So yeah, it's that skill based and that coordination of movements is probably where we see that slight advantage there as well. So a couple of reasons why we probably get better bang for buck out of our free weights instead of the machines there for that power base. But if you're looking for strength, and this is where arguably talking to some really high level rehab coaches and some physios out there who see a lot of pathology in their world, not just ACLs but tendons in particular. If you want to get a muscle strong, you have to take the stability out of the situation as well. For like for a calf raise, for example, if we want to make that calf unit strong, we kind of need to keep ourselves steady by either a seated machine or a standing machine. Like, we can't be getting great strength benefit by being in free space, going up and down. Because if you ever tried doing a single leg calf raise or a double leg calf raise in free space, you don't go up as high, and your performance in that task is much less. And let alone try a single leg calf raise, you kind of bounce around and your form goes completely out the window. So if your strength and hypertrophy is your goal, it kind of makes sense you need to sit down and do stuff on a machine. So yeah, there's once again, there's going to be situations where one will certainly be more beneficial than the other. But I loved the findings. Well, not that I'm biased one way or the other, but I found the findings very interesting, is that when you put head to head free weights versus machines, there was no difference for strength and hypertrophy, which was an interesting finding.
And it'd be a similar story, I'd assume, to your favourite exercise, which is the knee extension as well. We know that is safe, and we both love our ACLs, but it's safe for ACLs. But I think one of the reasons that it's also so effective is because there's absolutely nowhere to hide for that quad muscle to have to do that exercise. So if you want to get your quads strong, particularly if you're an atrophied, injured, weak state, then do that. Like it just works. It's hard. And if you do a squat and your quads are inhibited, you'll recruit more of your calf, you'll recruit more of your glutes, more of your hamstring to push that weight up. The knee extension is just gold when it comes to getting that quad strong.
Yep. That's why we like to live in the grey area. Embrace the grey when it comes to this. Don't necessarily be so black and white when it comes to programming, I think. It's a really key message here.
I'll take that as a life lesson as well. Embrace the grey.
Embrace the grey, mate. That hair, that's sort of starting to get a little bit grey on the beard.
Bit of salt and pepper now.
You'll never know on my head. I'd be the grey, actually. You do when I'm in holiday mode, Mick, and I've got my beard sort of straggly and my hair, and there's just grey everywhere. I can just shave 20 years of my life off just by shaving my hair off my face off. I digress. Older adults. So we just looked at younger adults. Now we're onto the older adult crew. So Kirk in 2024, Kirk and colleagues 2024, did a systematic review and meta-analysis of machine-only resistance training in older adults and compared against free weights. So they had 17 trials, 897 older adults, machine-based resistance training compared to balanced circuits or functional training was the looking at these papers. The protocol designs were roughly 6 weeks to 52 weeks in design, but the average of the papers included were about 3 months, and the exposures were 2 to 3 sessions per week. The classic machine exercises looked at in this study design were leg press, knee extension, knee flexion, chest press, seated row, lat pull downs. So I did forget to mention the average age of these participants was 70, and 70% of the
That's
population.
quite old.
Yeah. So a much older age group. 897 older adults, average age 70, and 70% of this population were women. So a much more skewed design towards the females. The outcomes looked at in this to determine whether or not machines were more beneficial to other types of modalities were the timed up and go test or a sit to stand test, which are commonly used tests used in our older populations to determine function and strength. So 1RM testing on a variety of different machines. The key findings of this systematic review, when they put everything together, functional capacity. So does the functional tests improve with the resistance training? Machine trained groups showed moderate improvements in the timed up and go and sit to stand tests compared to almost no changes in the control groups. So those groups that did balance training or body weight only free weights training. Strength, moderate to large gains in strength were seen in our machine-based protocols versus our controls, which makes sense. Like we're kind of, to be fair, like some of the comparison groups here, be it balance training and some body weight only training, maybe in a way comparing apples to oranges here. We've got apples over here doing machine weights with resistance training and actual load applied to the muscle to get a stimulus. And then over here, we arguably have probably got some lower level intensity, which may see the differences between the groups. But ultimately, in our older population who are at high degrees of fall risks and poor functional capacity and lots of different problems that arise as we get older, machine weights are a wonderful tool to use to help improve their function, their quality of life, and ultimately their strength on board. So, if you're dealing with older populations and we want to improve their quality of life and their life that are left in their years, machine weights are a wonderful way to achieve that. So, really interesting findings here and great paper.
And we've seen that being borne out. I'm going to send these guys a sponsorship check, invoice, I should say, in the mail, and that is Keyser. And Keyser, I think, have kind of cottoned on to this beautifully in that, most of the weights that they have, the resistance training that they have available in their facilities across the world, there's like 50 centres here in Australia these days, are machines, and they are unique machines, quite uniquely set up for older individuals. And I think that, we touched on it before, talking about the safety aspect and feeling controlled and that, like if I'm taking myself up to failure, for instance, like I just let the machine go and I know that it's not going to hurt me. And I think for people who are kind of 70 plus, for instance, that's a really important thing. And as you can see by the research as well, being strong is an important thing. So anything that breaks down barriers for older individuals to maintain strength into older age is a win. And it sounds like the machine weights is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, we want to create remove any barriers to exercise in our aging populations. And, it's just such an easy win. I think there's a lot of people who do, fear and worry about a gym environment. And any way to, I guess, sort of break down those fears and get them safely into a gym to help with their strength, their falls risks, their bone density, their metabolic health, cardiovascular health. Like we've got to be supportive of our aging population, and certainly resistance training is a really good one. As we've seen and probably discussed many times over, a lot of people do get the steps in, they get their steps, they get their cardiovascular benefit, but very, very rarely are we seeing the 2 resistance training sessions per week completed as well as part of those World Health Organization recommendations of 300 minutes plus of cardiovascular exercise, or, your 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. So there's some nice evidence to support our older age group.
I should say, I did say that 70's old. I was just surprised at the age of the cohort there. 70 is not old for those people who are listening. It is. You can be extremely fit.
My mother would give you a quick backhander, mate.
I deserve it.
Back to females. So the first study in the younger population, we saw a big bias towards males in that systematic review. There was some breakdown, and I guess I've done a little post hoc analysis of female representation in some of the data that has been put forward. As I mentioned before, large number of studies are male only, and if there is a mixed sample, they are still mainly biased towards males. So women are certainly underrepresented when it comes to looking at direct free weights versus machine weights. But what we can say on the available data is that women experience similar strength and hypertrophy responses across both free weights and machine weights when training for strength and hypertrophy. So that's something there to, we can't just always assume that females will respond the same way. And the findings here for resistance training in females are very similar to the outcomes in men. And at the moment, there's no evidence to say that one way is better than the other. At the moment, we can still acknowledge that there's still this research gap, but importantly for women, whatever you want to do in terms of resistance training, be it machines or free weights, you'll benefit as much as what the men do in terms of strength gains and hypertrophy gains as well.
Okay, good to include that.
So this actually feels like a really short episode because we've only just ticked over 30 minutes. Our last episodes, all these series have been pushing an hour because we've had all these amazing expert guests on it. It feels quite refreshing just to sort of hit that 30-minute mark, mate.
Well, it is Christmas Eve drop, so people were busy packaging up their presents for tomorrow.
Wrapping their Christmas presents, exactly, getting their menus and their recipes ready for tomorrow. So some practical recommendations from the available research that is here for clinicians and coaches. Ultimately, we've got to start with the person sitting in front of you and what their goals are. If their goals are for just general health and well-being, or is it for performance and return to sport, we need to take into account their training history, their confidence in the gym, what their training history is. Are they a novice in the gym when it comes to squats, deadlifts, or are they actually pretty well experienced? So tailor the program to suit the person sitting in front of you. That's number one. When it comes to machines, they're particularly useful when working with older adults, as we've seen before in that most recent systematic review I just discussed, and those who are very deconditioned and completely undertrained. If they're experiencing pain or fear or poor balance when using free weights, then machines will cut out that stability requirement and allow them to get the strength stimulus required to make a change within their body. So that's when machines are really helpful. And also too, like just simple progressions can be seen quite nicely on a machine. Of course, you can get nice progressions through a squat and a deadlift, but there tends to be a bit more of a plateau when you're dealing with those more functional exercises like a squat or a deadlift. And part of that cutting through a plateau often just needs regular exposure because it's a skill and it takes a bit more time to get through those plateaus a little bit. So on a machine, you can tend to continue to progress nicely and a bit more linearly throughout your training programs. Free weights are definitely more useful when we're testing. So if we're using 1RM testing or we're doing some kind of counter movement jump or a hop performance, obviously a functional test is required there for testing. If you want to get whole body coordination and include the trunk, things like squats and deadlifts are obviously really helpful. And also preparing athletes for multi-joint, multi-planar movements. You can get a little bit more variety in movement patterns with free weights versus a machine. Machines, you're very much so working through usually one planar movement, either back and forth or up and down, or a side to side, at least with a lunge or a squat. We can do things in different planes of movement. It can get quite messy and a bit imperfect, which is often quite nice when it comes to sport. So they're probably the big three practical recommendations there, which is really simple take-home messages there. For the general population, key messages and practical tips. So key messages for the general population and recreational lifters, both free weights and machines can build your strength, increase your muscle mass, and improve your power output. There is just a slight advantage for improving your power if you use free weights versus a machine. Priorities, however, should be down to and really push towards consistency. Regardless of your training, consistency is king or queen. 2 to 3 sessions a week of the strength load So if we want to get strong, we need to lift a heavy weight somewhere between 4 to 10 times, 5 reps to 10 reps per set. And we're looking to get 4 to 5 exposures per week if we want to get strong. If we want to get hypertrophy, we've got a much bigger range there. And Ed a podcast from a few podcast episodes ago would be a good person to go back and re-listen to.
Sure.
But in a nutshell, if we want to get hypertrophy back in our body, 2 to 3 exposures again, 6 to 15 repetitions per set. However you want to dress it up. So definitely consistency is really important, and progressive overload. We can't lift the same thing over and over and over again, week in, week out. If we want to get strong or build a muscle, we need to be looking to make those small minor progressions every week, every fortnight, and work close to fatigue. If your goal is muscle hypertrophy, we need to get almost to failure with each and every set that you do. Power and strength is slightly different. We don't need to be working through to failure every time. And in fact, it's counterintuitive. We want to leave some quality. We want to have some reps in the tank there and focus on quality over quantity. But if hypertrophy is your goal, you need to take your muscle to muscular failure. All right, mate. Last little bit to go back and look at those myths again that we put forward at the start. Myth number 1. Are free weights more functional than machines? Ultimately, the evidence is now shown, or what we've sort of talked about in this episode, is that there is some evidence that there is a slight transfer to power and jumping metrics when it comes to free weights. However, machine-only programs clearly improve strength and hypertrophy in both young and older adults. And in our older population, machines were superior to other types of training. So myth busted to a certain degree.
Yeah, I would agree with that generally. I think, though, you've got to train for what you want to do. For instance, if you just, and this is what the researchers looked at, if you're just training for strength or you're just training for hypertrophy, yes, that stimulus will work. But if you're an AFL player or a rugby player and you need to tackle all the time as part of it, clearly, like, you've got an outstretched arm and you need that proximal control and stability. So should we get these guys essentially kind of doing machine-based upper body work and not doing free weights? No, like, they definitely need to do free weights for that. Same would happen for a swimmer, for instance, that they've got to essentially they're moving over a stationary kind of point in the water. Like, that's why those guys do so many bands and etc. And should they be on machine weights and whatnot? No, you don't see them doing that in the elite environment as well. So I think that the myth generally is busted when it comes to strength and hypertrophy, as per the researchers said. But if you have got a specific sport and activity that you're training for, specifically train for that sport or activity.
Myth number 2, machines are cheating, not supported in this research review. So machines produce large strength gains and small to moderate hypertrophy gains in multiple studies, and they improve to real world function in older adults. So we can put a line through that one. And myth number 3, starting with machines will harm your free weight strength. In novices, starting with machines and then switching to free weights produced similar gains to those starting with free weights from day one. However, you can get into a habit of resistance training to improve whatever outcome it is that you're looking to improve, but make your muscles look good for the mirror or the beach, or actually get strong for life or your sport. Doesn't matter where you start. If it's machines, go for it. If it's free weights, go for it. There's no advantage one versus the other. So there you have it. It's all, like always, it's a fairly complicated, complex topic, but hopefully we've sort of cut through some of the noise and produced some information there that's helpful to all that are either currently doing resistance training and wondering if they should keep going with their current plan, or considering it and not really knowing where to start.
Yeah, the other myth that was in there that I know wasn't part of year 3, but was that machine weights are for old people and free weights are for young people generally. And I knew this episode was looming, and I actually paid a bit more attention to what's happening in my own gym. And just because of my schedule, sometimes I'll go to the gym early in the morning, which tends to be the older crew, and sometimes I'll kind of go between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m, just depending on what I do. The 4 p.m. to 9 crew are the younger ones. They all rock up after school or uni or work or whatever, and the oldies are the ones in there in the morning, early in the morning. And I would have thought that, like, me getting access to the machines in the morning would be difficult, and getting onto the free weights would be easy, and vice versa in the afternoon. That was not the case. You know, I was very surprised at how much some of the older athletes, you know, let's say 60 plus, were still doing free weights and doing them well, I should say. And also some of the youngies who it's like, come on, guys, I want to get on that machine. Like, get off. And they mill around and chat and socialise. And they weren't just all kind of pushing, you know, bench press and free weights kind of down the other end of the gym. So I got a feeling that, you know, people have changed a little bit in recent times, and they just do what works. And that's always the bottom line, is do what works for you.
Yeah, that's it. It might sometimes take a while to figure out what works for you, but once you can find that balance, that's gold. Bottle that up and just keep drinking from that bottle.
Yeah,
mate, that's it. Merry Christmas.
That's it for 2025. So for all those people who have either joined us from the start of this year, or have kind of come along for the ride, or even just jumped on this episode, for Mick and I, thank you very much for joining. We've both been actually quietly very chuffed with how well this podcast has been received and the growth that we've seen in this. So we can't do it without you guys. So we hope that you all have a wonderful break over this time, and that we look forward to a massive 2026. We're just going to do it bigger and better. So I'm looking forward to that, Mick, as well as you are, I know.
I agree, man. I agree with all those things you said. I honestly didn't think we'd get past season 1. So to be halfway through season 2, here we are.
Yep. No.
Heartfelt thanks from me as well. So that's it. That's a wrap for 2025, and a little break before we get back into it in 2026. I'm looking forward to that. But that's a wrap for today's episode. If you enjoyed the chat, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your mates. A quick disclaimer: this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical or individual advice. Always seek guidance from a qualified health professional for your specific needs. A big thanks to our sponsors, Premax, high performance skincare for high performance people, and Learn.physio, world-class education for health professionals. We'll see you next year.